One of the criticisms that I get on this channel, although notably this is a rare criticism from people out there on the internet.com, usually they're on the left wing, usually they're people that don't actually watch my videos consistently, is the way that I constantly mock the idea of January 6th. Where were you January 6th? I was in a car dealership trying to buy a car, and the guy told me at the car dealership that frame damage, not a big deal. Frame damage comes from parallel parking. Frame damage should not prevent me from paying full price for a car. And then I looked up on the screen, and what did I see? I saw CNN and Our Republic was getting frame damage. Where were you January 6th? Where were you January 6th? Where were you January 6th? I was in a car dealership trying to buy a car. Where were you? Let me know down in the comments below. Down in the comments below. Where were you? Where were you? Now, the reason I mock January 6th is not because it's not serious that people storm the Capitol. It's not because I'm somebody who's in favor of rioting. In fact, the reason I make fun of it is because I'm against rioting, and January 6th was about the 598th most violent riot within the 6-month period of time that it occurred. On top of that, I'm old enough to remember when Black Lives Matter rioters tried storming the White House for multiple nights in a row, and people made fun of Trump because the Secret Service said go into the bunker, and yet somehow I'm supposed to feel sympathetic for Ocasio-Cortez being scared in her office, which was not in the Capitol building. It was in an adjoining building that was not under siege. But there's also the element of hypocrisy. The left wing doesn't care about rioting, they care what you're rioting for. This is why they supported the Black Lives Matter riots, which were the most destructive riots in American history. And they don't care about our institutions. And I'm going to demonstrate that to you with what is going on with the Supreme Court and how we're just not talking about the insanity that is coming from their activists and their politicians related to these government officials and our sacred institution that is the Supreme Court. But before we get into that, this video is sponsored. We'll throw it over to the sponsor, talk about it on the other side. You guys know the drill. Let's do that. The hottest temperatures of the year are in fact here, and at this time in particular, with the price of fuel being so high, it's important to be more cautious of your energy uses, which is one of the reasons why I'm happy to report that I'm working with Easy Summer Cool to help you with your cooling needs. This little mini air conditioner is absolutely perfect for me. I put it right by my bed at night, run it, and it blows cool air at me all night long. You just put a little bit of water in the top and it shoots out the cooled, chilled air at you. Now, I'm told by people out there in my audience that this works best in low humidity environments, so definitely keep that in mind when you're going over to easysummercool.com, where you could find a 50% discount for members of my audience. That's easysummercool.com. Cool yourself without breaking the bank. Now, because last week the Supreme Court dropped a number of decisions, including a crucial decision overturning Roe versus Wade and a crucial Second Amendment case, the left wing has started lighting their hair on fire. They started attacking the court and attacking it based on it somehow being illegitimate because it doesn't represent the will of the people, which, by the way, is ridiculous. It is the Supreme Court. It is meant to interpret the Constitution. The reason they're lifetime appointments is to shield them from the will of the people, but whatever, we'll touch on that a little bit later. And this is called for many left-wing politicians to attack the court, again, say it's illegitimate, talk about stolen justices and how we need to undermine the court as an institution by having the left wing destroy the filibuster and appoint more justices to the Supreme Court, because as we all know, you can really trust the judicial process if when you get the ruling you don't like, you just change up how the judicial process works. Totally fair, totally sensible, totally doesn't undermine the way the Supreme Court works, doesn't undermine the constitutional order, and would be very legitimate, unlike the illegitimate Supreme Court ruling things like abortion isn't in the Constitution and the Second Amendment actually does exist and the right to bear arms is explicitly stated in the Constitution, or whatever conspiracy theories that they came up with. However, it's escalated even beyond the rhetoric game. It's escalated beyond Ocasio-Cortez having fun, looking like she's goofing off, talking about how the court is illegitimate in the streets of Washington, D.C.
Illegitimate! 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 Into the streets! 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 Into the streets!
The left is explicitly threatening the justices of the Supreme Court. Now, I'd like to say that this much hatred for the Supreme Court and this targeting of the Supreme Court justices could possibly get out of hand in the future at some point. But unfortunately, I can't say that because it's already gotten out of hand, because even though the media doesn't really like to talk about it, a left-wing activist already tried to assassinate Brett Kavanaugh at his home, which of course the address to it was published by people on the left wing that were angry about the abortion decision before it even came out. Remember, this is all at the time that we're dealing with the January 6 hearings, where we're supposed to be concerned about some randos entering the Capitol with vague plans on the possibility of attacking members of Congress or the vice president. Now, don't get me wrong, that is bad, that is horrific, and those people, if they actually had legitimate plans to do so, should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But we're talking about an assassination attempt on the Supreme Court that apparently was only thwarted because the guy's sister called the FBI and said, hey, my brother's gonna do this. Nobody seems to be stopping him. He came all the way from California, crossed state lines into Virginia, which you would think would excite Anna Kasparian, and you should probably do something about that because he's getting a little bit crazy. However, the threats to the Supreme Court haven't stopped there. The threats and intimidation are not reserved to just Justice Kavanaugh. They've actually expanded to all of the conservative members of the Supreme Court, and you can see on social media all of their addresses have been doxxed for the public with the implicit threat that they should be attacked for doing so, because as you well know, these people are taking away women's rights, whatever, undemocratic, blah blah blah. They're kicking it back to the democratic institutions of our nation where this issue belongs. How could they possibly do this in such an undemocratic way? Now, this is totally incoherent and nonsensical, hence my mocking tone, because as I've talked about multiple different times on this channel, the Supreme Court, in a very undemocratic way, instituted Roe versus Wade. First and foremost, this was legislation written from the bench, but it was also legislation written from the bench at a time when only 6 states and Washington, D.C. had legal elective abortions. They stole this issue from the elected branches of the government and created a national extreme abortion policy that they applied to all the states. I understand a lot of people are emboldened by polling that they just don't quite understand that says 70% of the American population is in favor of keeping Roe in place, because most of those people think that Roe is the thing that if you get rid of it, abortion becomes illegal nationwide due to the widespread ignorance among the left wing. But in reality, back in the day in 1973, if we're going to talk about democratic norms, this was not the majority position. This was not reflected in the legislature. This was only in a few niche, very left-wing areas, and that's where abortion lied in the United States of America. And it was only recently not criminalized in those states, most of them. So this was a relatively new phenomenon. It had no backing from the general public, and yet the Supreme Court did it. But I'm supposed to take it seriously when the Supreme Court actually stole the issue from the majority of people who disagreed with it, versus the Supreme Court giving the issue back to the majority of people who supposedly agree with abortion. I'm supposed to take European leaders seriously when they condemn the United States, when a cursory look at America's abortion laws under Roe compared to Europe, and even America's abortion laws post the repeal or the overturning of Roe, and Europe actually is more conservative in the majority of the countries versus the majority of states in the United States, and even the so-called most extreme states. I mean, you have total unbelievable idiots like Ethan Klein tweeting about how Amy Coney Barrett has crazy eyes and she's a crazy person and she's just like this character from The Handmaid's Tale, because, you know, people like Ethan Klein are completely incapable of watching a different series ever. They can only pay attention to one IP at once. Remember when all of these people were using Harry Potter as their reference for everything related to American politics? Now that new thing is The Handmaid's Tale, but Ethan never criticizes Europe for having an extremer version of The Handmaid's Tale, and the reason he doesn't do that is because in Europe, this was never a court issue. This was an issue that was worked out by the individual citizens, and it turns out without the top-down approach from 1973, people tend to draw the line much closer to conception than Roe versus Wade actually did. So on any practical level, if you're angry about the so-called violation of abortion rights in the United States of America by overturning a Supreme Court decision that never made any sense at all, you should be directing your ire at Europe. If you are concerned about the democratic process because 70% of the population said that the Supreme Court should keep Roe, even though the Supreme Court is not supposed to respond to the democratic portions of the population, regulation, they're actually explicitly not supposed to do that, then you should be concerned about the Supreme Court instituting Roe when far less people supported abortion, especially up to the extreme threshold that they set. But of course, that would be consistent. Of course, that would be lacking in hypocrisy. And it's far more fun to dox the Supreme Court justices, threaten their lives, have weak people like Carlos Maza talk about throwing Molotov cocktails at them, because that's all fun and good. And honestly, I truly believe that had the assassination plot against Kavanaugh actually worked, the majority of these left-wing people would say, not enough justices were killed. They would say one more to go in order to get a majority. They would be begging Joe Biden to replace Kavanaugh because, you know, it's all fair and good. You appointed somebody through the process. You blocked Obama's Supreme Court nominee. We're calling that stealing a nominee. So if our activists try to target and maybe even kill a Supreme Court nominee, that's totally fine. That's totally fair game. That's basically equivalent. And honestly, it's deservedly so because women are going to die. Do I need to show you a picture of a coat hanger so that you can understand women are going to die? Again, that's how extreme we're getting. I mean, just to give you an example of the craziness of the left wing, there's a tweet from somebody who identifies as a she, they, it, and a mouse. And normally I wouldn't highlight this because this is an unverified account and it seems like it's just some rando, but it has 128,000 likes at the time of me recording this video. And it's this she, they, it, mouse declaring that they, or mouse, are so proud of Generation Z for doxing all the conservative Supreme Court justices and leaking some of their credit card info to the public. Again, 128,000 people like this, 13,000 retweets, only a certain amount of quote tweets, and obviously this isn't ratioed in the ground, even though this is somebody advocating and cheering on the harassment and targeting of our Supreme Court. Again, supposedly one of our sacred institutions that the left wing cares about so much. But even 128,000 people cheering on the doxing, harassment, and potential violence against the Supreme Court isn't the craziest thing that we're going to talk about. Things actually get even more insane, and we're going to discuss that. However, I do want to talk first about how this actually got overturned. The Republicans worked the process, conservatives, social conservatives, pro-life people, for 49 years. For 49 years, they would elect candidates that promised to be pro-life. They would say those candidates needed to appoint pro-life Supreme Court justices. They did everything humanly possible to work within the process, and only a few days post the overturning of 50 years of work that led into it, the Democrats are already in burn it down mode. The Democrats are already talking about cheating, packing the court, and saying that the process is rigged, when all the Republican Party did and all the social conservatives did, all the pro-life people did, was work within the system, within our institutions, to get the results that they wanted. On an issue, by the way, that they care deeply about. I've talked about multiple different times how I'm not really in the pro-life camp. I'm not really into any of that stuff, if I'm being perfectly honest. But the pro-life people that I talk to are into it. They are supportive of it. They think that this is a killing baby situation, and a huge chunk of my audience definitely agrees with them, if not the majority. So imagine you believe that in your bones. You believe that this is this great injustice, but you are so committed to working within the rules, to working within society, that you still go on a 49-year-long trek in order to get this kickback to the states so that maybe you can get the policy that you want at the state level. That's how the Republican mindset works. That's how the supposed threats to our institution work. And the left, again, is already talking about burning it down, getting rid of the Supreme Court, term limiting them, whatever tricks that they can possibly do in order to undermine the judicial process in the nation. The left wants to do this because they've experienced a cultural loss once in the history of this country. But that's my rant from my soapbox. Like I said, I am promising you stupid, so we're gonna throw it over to New Jersey to a story that I saw in my local news of a homeowner being harassed for an unbelievably stupid reason.
Ask anyone on this seemingly quiet street in West Caldwell, New Jersey, not much ever happens here. That's until a few weeks ago, when a draft opinion from the U.S. Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade was leaked. According to police, a home, which we are choosing not to show on camera, started receiving threatening mail and packages addressed to Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito, who wrote the opinion.
I didn't even know a justice lived here.
It turns out he did. Justice Alito, who is a New Jersey native, called West Caldwell Buffalo home for years, but moved out after he was confirmed to the High Court in 2007.
So it turns out that doxing people, a little bit of a sketchy business. It turns out that publishing Supreme Court justices' addresses so that your left-wing activists can go terrorize them at their home is not all it's cracked up to be, because apparently in West Caldwell, New Jersey, a homeowner is currently being harassed by left-wing activists, mailed suspicious packages, which one can only hope are fake bombs and not real bombs, all based on the fact that he committed the crime of moving into a house that Justice Alito sold in the year 2007. And that's right, the left put out a 15-year-old address for Justice Alito, and they're still attacking him, even though it doesn't really make any sense for him to live there, considering the Supreme Court is in DC, so you would think that they would live around the DC area. And I love the way that the reporters for this news are casually describing the police statements. They have to have a 24-hour officer there, or a patrol there, in order to watch this house due to the threats, due to people showing up, due to the terrorism that these homeowners are living under, and they're asking people to calmly stop sending suspicious packages and bombs to the residents, please.
Cops say Alito's old address was published on TikTok by pro-abortion advocates, which has been widely shared, more so since the final ruling Friday. The current homeowner is now receiving numerous pieces of hate mail and even one suspicious package that a neighbor tells us recently sparked an evacuation on the block. That concern now resulting in a patrol car to stand guard outside the home 24 hours a day. West Caldwell police even issued a statement on the situation, urging activists to stop sending mail to the home.
How about we're going to launch an investigation, we're going to charge you with domestic terrorism, we're going to charge you with attempting to intimidate a judicial official, attempting to tamper with the legal proceeding, anything that we can think of, because what you're doing is completely and utterly out of bounds, and the fact that you can't even target the correct person makes you even more of a scumbag, because you don't care about who you affect with your terrorism, you just want to inflict harm on other people. Remember, the left wing is the sympathetic side, the left wing is the care about people side, the left wing is the side that, wow, is so caring about our institutions that they're willing to terrorize anybody who's not even affiliated with the Supreme Court justice, but happens to reside in the area that a Supreme Court justice once resided when they weren't a Supreme Court justice. There's also reports of a waiter or waitress photographing the front and back of Clarence Thomas's credit card and putting that out on TikTok, and people claiming that they spent money using Clarence Thomas's credit card. If these reports are to be true, I hear you can get 15 years for spending over $1,000, and if I were a prosecutor in any jurisdiction where somebody did this, I would be pursuing that to the maximum. I would also be charging them with judicial tampering, whatever you can think of, and the waiter is going to have the book thrown at him or her as well, because you definitely deserve it, and we can't have a society where this happens. On top of that, I would release the name of the restaurant. If you're going to have employees that are going to do this, I'm going to make for damn sure that no other place is going to do the same. You can't have this nonsense go on in your nation if you're a serious country. All these lefties want to pretend they're living in an oppressive society. All these lefties want to pretend that the government is going after them. Well, prosecutors should make that belief a reality and go after them justifiably for the crimes that they're committing and for the threat that they pose to our institutions. The idea that we have to wait for a Supreme Court justice to actually be killed or injured for us to take this seriously is absurd. If anybody published the address of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, we would be freaking out about it, especially if it was post a controversial Supreme Court decision. This is crazy, it's insane, we can't let it happen, but hey, those are just my thoughts, so let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like this video, show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on all my social media, support me via the support links in the description box of this video. This has been me talking about the insanity of the left when it comes to the Supreme Court. Till next time.